This episode of the 4 Mile Circus was our first attempt at a Skype interview for the show. Because of that, you may notice a few minor audio artifacts throughout the episode. We're working on solving those problems for future Skype interviews. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the 4 Mile Circus podcast. 4 Mile Circus is a media services company in Brooklyn, New York. My name is Sean Mannion. I am one half of 4 Mile Circus, and also in the room, because you can't see because this is the internet and this is a podcast, is Nicole Solomon, the other half of 4 Mile Circus. Hey.
Hi. I'm Nicole Solomon. I'm the other half of 4 Mile Circus, and I'm also in the room.
Yes, but not in the room, but also exciting person, because we're experimenting with doing this over Skype for the first time. Usually we do all our interviews in person.
But sometimes there's a very special person who can't be in the room with us and our root beer, sadly.
Yes, we have...
there's root beer. Sorry, I'm not supposed to give myself away.
No.
It's good. Oh, now it's ruined. I mean, it's ruined.
It's ruined. Everything's ruined. Everything is ruined. I feel terrible. Nicole feels terrible. We're all going to cry into our tasty, boozy root beers. But on the Skype, we have Hannah Neurotica, the founder of... What is she the founder of?
She's the founder of Axe Wound, both the zine and the film festival, as well as Women in Horror Month, and a number of other exciting projects that we're going to be talking about today. Axe Wound was certainly the first feminist horror zine that I was ever aware of. I believe maybe it was the first of its kind. And Women in Horror Month recently concluded its eighth, Jesus. Oh my God, so bad. Its eighth successful year. And more recently, she started the Axe Wound Film Festival, which showcases horror movies by women, and will enjoy its third year this coming November. I attended the first 2 years. Sean came with me for the second one, and we can both attest that it's one of the most fun and filmmaker-friendly fests that we have had the pleasure to attend, and Hannah's contributions to the horror community are invaluable. And so we're going to talk to her about all things horror and the many exciting projects she has on tap. Does that sound good, everybody?
I think that sounds pretty good. I like that. I like horror. I like film festivals. So a zine.
Yeah, you want to start there?
What is zine?
What is a zine? Is that what you said, Sean?
That's what he said.
What is a zine, Nicole?
Let our guest answer.
What is a zine, Hannah?
A zine is a handmade magazine. I guess basically it's created with a photocopier, Sharpies, tape. Anyone can make them, and you photocopy and distribute them. It's obviously, since internet has, in the last decade or so, zining has always been underground, but it's like more so. Although with the political state, I can get on this later. I think it's coming back. But zines are handmade magazines essentially, and they're rooted in punk culture, but also they originated, I think, amongst Star Trek fans. I think that's a fun fact.
Star Trek fans
so it was like
everything.
it's a great medium to express yourself, whether it's activism or just about your life, and connect with other people, especially before the internet, blogging and stuff. So I was super into that medium. Like, people made fun of me because they associated me with the word zine, like it's all I ever talked about forever. And I just, that was where everything kind of started for me, was that medium.
Yeah, I feel you on that. They were very important for me as well. I was wondering how you got into zines at first. I think you started Axe Wound at Evergreen, as I recall, which was a hotbed of zine activity, I'd imagine, when you were there.
Axe Wound, technically, I started it, I guess I'm going to give this away. So it's like, whatever. I technically started it outside of Evergreen because there was a whole issue and I couldn't go back to the school. So I finished it in an apartment an hour away from the campus.
Okay.
But I did go to Evergreen that year and didn't start it till right after. But that is inconsequential. Sorry. What was the question?
How did you get how did you like get into zines in the first
Sorry,
place?
I get so anxious sometimes when I'm like verbally talking. So I got into zines. Honestly, I don't. It wasn't like I was into zines because I knew, oh, this is a zine. I really think this is cool. Actually, I was doing this before I knew what zines were. I always was fascinated with creating media in the form of like printed papers. I always had this thing about I just loved printed papers. And I was like, "Oh my god, I can create my own magazine and like tape things down not knowing anything about it." So I think in high school, I mean, I was making poetry, I guess you would call them chat books, which I didn't know at the time. And so I didn't really know what I was doing, just that I knew I wanted to make these things. And once I started getting into like, Riot Girl and all that punk rock feminism later down the line, it was like, oh, okay. So there's more to this than just, publishing my poetry and stuff. There's personal zines and there's anthology zines and there's zines about biking and, it's like everything under the sun. And so it was sort of like taking that medium, but just sort of always having done it, not knowing what it was, I guess.
I hear that. When I was a kid, my sisters and I used to make fake magazines, which were basically zines, although we didn't like, we hadn't heard that term either, but it was just that intuitive thing of like, oh, I can paste things down on paper and put words on it and make my own publication. And it's such an exciting, empowering thing that then when you're like, wait, lots of people do this? There's like a whole community of this.
Oh, totally. I think, I don't know if you can relate, but I know like even when I had like my first computer, it was like there was the newsletter template. And I
Mm.
remember being like, oh, I'm going to make a newsletter. But it was like, I didn't know what to put in it. So I was like, oh, what's in teen magazines? Beauty tips. I don't have fucking beauty tips, but I made them up. It's like I didn't think outside the box yet, but I knew that I wanted to be doing something in that arena. So that really, but zines didn't really become a part of my life as zines probably, yeah, until college, early college.
And and where did the idea for Axe Wounds specifically come from?
Okay, so when I did go to Evergreen, there was this, as for people who know Evergreen or don't know, as you said, Evergreen's sort of different than most colleges. It's sort of like the home of, Kathleen Hanna went there. She's got a lot of history and artists and stuff that went there, and it's non-traditional. So one of the things that some students did was they got together and they created something called the Olympia, what was it? The Olympia Sex Conference. And I didn't have anything to do with it. It just, it was not my scene, that group that was putting it together. And then I went into the Women's Resource Center that I was interning at as for like my credits that semester. And this guy was reading, I'm trying to give like a speedy answer here because I will go on the longest tangent. Please interrupt me if needed.
It's all interesting though, so take your time, please.
And so I saw this guy, he was reading this book by Carol Clover, who at the time, nobody knew who Carol Clover was then. I mean, the concept of the word final girl wasn't in the public conscience at all. And I was struggling at the time with being a feminist and a horror fan. And because I just hadn't had this epiphany yet, I guess. And so I saw that book and I was like, holy shit, what is that book? And I just like attacked this guy basically with like needing to know everything to the point that he just handed me the book.
It was Men, Women, and Chainsaws, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was like mind blown for me, like this concept of academia and feminism and not feminism. I don't want to put that word in with that book. I would say gender studies, maybe. That it just blew my mind. And so he asked me, because he could tell how into the book I was. He's like, oh, I'm doing something for the Olympia Sex Conference, and I'm thinking, which I still don't know how this relates, but he was like, I'm going to do something about gender and horror, like a little workshop. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know shit about that topic, but I want to co-host it with you. So I just want to do it. And I had just like because I'd been thinking about these things for so long. So I ended up running this workshop with him, and everyone who was there thought that I had been like studying it for like my lifetime, which was like, wow. So I ended up at that point, the event ended. I didn't have anyone else to talk to about the subject, but I was like, when you get super into something and you're like, I need to talk to people about this. There was nobody, because all my friends were like kind of in this hardcore feminist sort of anti everything mode at that point, and I was trying to sort of find a way to reconcile things that I felt were misogynist. And so anyway, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not making sense.
No, you're making sense, and don't be sorry. Yeah, you're totally right. She's making sense.
Yeah, you're making perfect sense. Don't worry about it. Don't apologize for anything. Trust me, you're not rambling as much as plenty of people do.
Have you heard us talk ever?
You've had conversations with both Nicole and I.
So you don't need to worry.
We intentionally have all of our business meetings padded by like an hour, just because we only really have an hour of like actual stuff to talk about, but we talk about everything else for the rest of the time.
Yeah, the digressions are like the meat of our meetings.
Pretty much, yeah.
I feel better then. Okay.
Neat.
So, okay. So, Olympia, so the workshop ended. I really wanted to talk to people. Didn't have anybody. I couldn't go online. I tried to go online and look up, women, feminism, horror. Nothing. And I was just so frustrated. And at this point, there was a mistake with the financial aid office, and I lost all my credits and couldn't go back to the school. So long story short, was living somewhere not far away. I was very isolated. I was struggling probably with one of the worst bouts of my mental illness. And I was like probably in this house for 1 to 2 years, and I did not leave it hardly ever. And it was really rough. And I remember just sitting on my floor one day and saying, I'm going to make a zine about this topic because I have no one to talk to about it and there's no one online. And I wrote just all my thoughts about it. I made a quiz, I think, like, which final girl are you or something. And like, I had Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, like, do I count or something, And it was just silly, but also just kind of like this really ugly collage of all the things that were in my head. And I had the idea for the title because I just was like, oh my God, axe wound. That's a derogatory term for a menstruating woman. That's perfect. And so it just kind of, came together, and I made it. I didn't know who I was going to give it to because there were like, whatever. I don't know if you guys were live journal people at any point.
Yep.
I was aware of it, but I wasn't cool enough to be part of it.
I don't know if cool's the right word, but
it seemed like all the cool people were doing it. Well, not the cool kids, but like the cool weird kids, because I hung out with the weird kids, and the cool weird kids were on live journal. I'm speaking of live, I'm Instagram living this because I think it's interesting.
Great.
Just sharing.
So you're get out.
There's nobody on it.
He just shoved his phone in my face. Continue, Hannah, please. That's live journal.
Live journal. So live journal was like the closest, I guess you would say, to a social media network, and I pretty much lived on live journal, and there you could create communities and search people by interest. And I slowly made my way into the zine community, and then slowly found people one at a time who liked horror and were feminist. And it was like one person here, one person there, and then one day I discovered the whole concept of a zine distro, which is basically, for people that don't know, it's like, since stores aren't usually going to be primarily carrying tons of zines, people would create zine stores online that, they would commission, and people would buy them for a few bucks. And, so the first time I had submitted axe wound to one, and this girl was like, aesthetically, this is not nice. Because at the time I just was like, it was the ugliest scene. But she's like, but the content is really interesting. And so I'm going to take it. And it was like, oh my God, the coolest thing that ever happened to me at that moment, that this little zine distro was going to carry my zine. And slowly, as the years went on, just kind of like person by person, I started to find people. But when I would post, like I have a memory when I went to Rue Morgue, back when Ivanka was the editor, and I posted on their message board something about it, and I was just fucking annihilated. It was like, don't mix feminism and horror. Who's this cunt? Get her off the site. Blah blah. Blah. And then
Wow.
somebody chimed in mid bully and said, "Whoa! I just looked at her site and she interviewed Ivanka. Maybe we should relook at this." And I was like, "Really?" And then Ivanka jumped in and like defended me, and it was like, "Oh my god, this is so stupid." I was just so like, it was just crazy. It was that hard to find people to even bring the topic up without being just assumed that I was like this quote feminazi evil bitch that wanted to ruin horror for everybody. Because that's how it was characterized. That I was just going to ruin horror for everyone. So that obviously added fuel to my fire. And I was like, wow, there is no community at all for women, not even women who like horror. Women weren't talking about liking horror, really. It was like at that time. So I guess slowly I brought it through LiveJournal. And then I think it kind of got bigger when out of the blue, I get an email from Newsweek. I mean, out of the freaking blue. I'm doing zines on my floor, like in my house, like what the hell are they contacting me for? And they're like clearly so desperate for a woman to comment on horror, and it was that hard for them to find someone that I was the person that they found. And they wanted me to give them a quote saying what my response was to Eli Roth saying that his film was like the most feminist horror film or something.
Oh, Hostel 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like, well, first off, I haven't seen it. It didn't come out yet. And I'm not like an industry person. So I don't know. I mean, I had no connections to the horror film scene whatsoever. And it was all zine. And so they quoted me and they credited me as an amateur film critic or something like that.
Okay.
Which I still am kind of like,
What?
okay, what?
I mean, I guess.
I mean, why would you want to make me sound like that for your sake? But anyway, so that sort of was like this like shaking, like, oh my God, oh my God. And when that came out, it slowly was kind of like more people sort of found me, and I could slowly build this community. But I have to share one thing that as soon as that came out, I got an email I'll never forget from a woman who said, I don't know if Hannah's reading this or her people are reading this. At my job at a desk, trying to check my email before my boss saw, and I'm just like laughing, and I'm like, wow. So, it was just this really weird mind fuck in a way of like, what's going on? And then just things kind of, I think the next like really big bump that it became bigger was when Eli Roth, oddly enough, considering the Newsweek thing years later, got a copy of it and gave one to Quentin Tarantino while they were shooting Inglourious Bastards in Germany and tweeted about it. And then that kind of was like, okay, now people know about it. And of course, I have different feelings now about Eli Roth than I did at the time. So, but yeah, so that is the long-ish version of the zine, and it's I guess the one main weird fact about it is that people think of it as like this long-running thing, but even though I made it over the course of like a decade, I only ever really published 3 or 4 issues. And I think it's the myth of it, the concept of it, that was what grabbed people more than the people that actually ever had a chance to see it. So sometimes I think it's the theory of it that is what was popular rather than the thing itself.
That's really interesting, and it makes sense because all of this stuff that you were talking about in terms of like the isolation and everything, obviously I relate to that, and we'll get to this in a minute, but I mean that's part of why when I was finally like making a horror film and knew I was going to be putting it out there in the world, I cannot, just to take a second here, I could not express how grateful I was and still am for you specifically, and what you were doing with like Axe Wound and Women in Horror Month, and the fact that you were a key part of building a community that I could step into that was like amazingly actually like welcoming and felt like home. And I'm not used to that in like any kind of like subculture or scene. I'm not used to feeling at home. I'm used to feeling very kind of marginal and like I don't quite belong and I'm kind of an interloper. And with honestly the feminist horror community that's around today, it's one of the rare places where I'm like, oh, this fits, this makes sense. And like you were, from our first interaction, you were so nice to me and you were so welcoming and you were so encouraging, and you weren't like, you know, scenestery or kind of like policing who's a part of this cool thing. You know, you weren't being like that at all. And like I can't express what a difference that has made for me, and I know I'm not the only person. And so like when you're talking about Axe Wound and the myth of it and the idea of it, like I've never actually read an issue of Axe Wound, much as I would like to.
People haven't.
But like, yeah, I mean, but the concept was so powerful because I was by myself and like reading articles about how like I've told a lot of people this story. Like when I was writing Small Talk, I remember Jennifer's Body had come out and hadn't done well at the box office. And then there were all these articles about like, well, there just isn't really an audience for feminist horror movies or movies like written and directed by women that are horror. And that's just not really a thing. They tried it. It didn't work. And I'm just like, oh my God, really? Is it like 2010 or whatever year it is? And this is the like, we're really having this conversation. And I'm really reading an article in Entertainment Weekly where somebody is being quoted as an expert being like, well, women just go to horror movies with their boyfriends, or women go to horror movies so that they can like get scared and hold hands. And there just isn't really a base. And I'm just like, so I don't exist. You know, okay, I'm used to this feeling of like, you don't exist. All right. So it's one of those. And then I'm like, oh, but I'm not alone. There's this whole actual community that's just growing and thriving since that time, and it's amazing. And thank you for that. And I'm curious about how you went from Axe Wound and kind of the community that started fomenting around that. That obviously, like there was a hunger for that zine, there was a need for that zine, and then at a certain point you launched Women in Horror Month, which kind of further helped stake out this ground. And I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how that happened.
You have no idea the beauty of the transition I'm about to make. Okay?
Okay. I'm ready.
Started Women in Horror Month because it was the time Jennifer's Bodies had just come out.
Okay.
And I was interviewed for CBC Radio. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but
exclusive here on the 4 Mile Circus podcast, everybody.
So basically, they have me on. Well, let me back up. Before they have you on, the producer calls you and talks to you, and she's like, "Oh, what is with Jennifer's Bodies and women liking horror? What is it?" And she was just like so blown away, and I was just frustrated that someone in media was like so shocked by this. So I'm like breaking it down for her, and then she says, "Okay, we're gonna have," and this I've talked about before. She said there's going to be a panel on the live morning show. CBC, I guess, is like NPR in Canada, and Ivanka Vukovic, who was Rue Morgue at the time, was going to be on it along with another woman named, and I pause for a second because I have to burp. There we go. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Okay, so. So they also had a third woman named Aviva Briefel, who I happen to have been a fan of because I read an article in college she wrote about menstruation and horror, and I thought it was brilliant. So it was really cool to be included in this conversation, and we're on air, and I am working at a famous feminist health organization at the time, trying to call and be on live radio in between hoping patients are like, I'm like, my boss, please just let me be on the radio right now for like 5 minutes. And so the fucking woman who interviewed us decided to use this half-hour time that could have been well spent to talk about how odd we are. And Ivanka was the only one in the studio. And for those that don't know, she is a very colorful woman. She is covered in tattoos. And she spent the time asking Ivanka how she gets dates with all those tattoos, and talking about like just fucking everything you would not believe or want to have happen in this conversation. It was like, we're weird and we're like this token thing. So I was so pissed, I was so angry, that I just like opened my laptop. I don't even know what, I didn't even blog regularly, but I opened up a new blog and I just pounded out this rant that had an embarrassing amount of mistakes in it. And it was just like, fuck this. We need a Women in Horror Month. And I think before I wrote that, I actually was on the couch and I said to my dad, I was like, you know what, Dad? I got to start Women in Horror Month. And he's like, yeah, okay, you do that. And I was like, I'm going to watch me. And so I did this post and I said, I'm declaring February Women in Horror Month. You can decide to join me or not, but I'm doing it. And this is why. And I was blown away at the response. Like instantly, it was just like, whoa, what the hell just happened? And it really was cathartic, but also empowering and scary. And I mean, I don't know, I was putting a lot of myself into that, a lot that could have offended a lot of people. And it felt good to get this response from people that was like, okay, yeah, this is something that needs to happen and this is why. And my biggest, I mean, I could go on so many tangents here because after 8 years, there's just way too many thoughts about Women in Horror Month in my brain. But at that point, I didn't know it was going to last. I mean, I assumed it was like a one-off thing because everyone's attention spans are, you know, so especially now. So for the first couple of years, it was like, is this going to happen again? Are people going to remember? So now I'm at a point where most people don't even know me, or so. I mean, I had to break free of that for a while. Everyone was like, "Oh, Hannah, Women in Horror Month." It took a while for people to be like, "Okay, we don't even know who Hannah is. We just know what Women in Horror Month is," and that's what my hope was. So that's when I kind of felt like I didn't have to like think every year it wasn't going to happen again. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, because you kind of, it's very community driven. It's kind of like it's kind of an if you build it, they will come kind of situation, I guess. Like you built it, you built the concept, and now like you have like a website that's a hub, and you kind of, have people, for listeners at home, each year you kind of solicit events or projects. And what an event for Women in Horror Month can be is incredibly broad. Like I think 4 Mile Circus's event this year was like, we will be celebrating online. Our event will be an ongoing month-long online celebration, which just means we're going to be like sharing content basically by women working in horror. And that was the event, and other people I know do like film screenings or throw parties or, put up articles specifically about it, podcasts, whatever. And you just kind of distribute information about people participating and are kind of a central hub, but you're not like directing people what to do. It's just like, do whatever you're going to do and I'll help spread the word about it. And that seems to be working really well from where I'm sitting, at least.
Okay, so what you said about, it being a hub, I kind of see Women in Horror Month as like kind of an instigator in that sense. We instigate you to do something, and then because really Women in Horror Month, I say we, but I guess, it's really not that many people. It's like me and like two other people that are basically saying your community, whether it's online, whether it's in person, like nothing changes in the world unless it changes in your community. And so by bringing this to your space, I can't do that. I can't travel around the world and put on events all over the place. So people are empowered, I think, by creating events. Some of them go on to create events that they then do for the rest of the year. And I think that is empowering for those people to be creating something, and also building this new space that didn't exist for people before. And whether that's through sharing something on a social media or a show in person, it's like that's your community, and it makes a difference. And seeing how media has changed too in the last just 8 years. I mean, now new ways of celebrating. Instagram wasn't around then, but now you have like the daily tag once a day, Instagram games that people are playing. And it's just cool to see how people are creating quote events as media shifts in these new ways. And it's really cool. It's exciting because I never would have thought of that. Like other people did that. And that's weird for me sometimes to think about, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. How did when you first got started though, you I assume had to do more of the lifting yourself in terms of making sure that there was a thing that was Women in Horror Month, whatever that was. And what did that look like in the early years, however much you want to talk about it? Like talk about whatever you want, avoid whatever you want to avoid.
You just and the stuff I'm avoiding, I have no issue telling you guys off the record. So,
Sure. Cool. Exciting.
So yeah. So basically, what I did was the website really wasn't people. I mean, come on, really, it's rare that people spend much time on websites, really, unless it's like. I mean, I knew social media was the place at the time. So anytime somebody mentioned Women in Horror Month in any capacity, I would share it on the blog. And I mean, not on the blog, I'm sorry, on Facebook. And I would just encourage people, here's things you can do. I would do a lot of the posts. But it really did kind of catch on quick. And then there was a period after the first few years where people might not remember, they might remember the Viscera organization. Took us under they contacted us and asked if we wanted to be under their nonprofit status. And it wasn't a great thing. So that was a rough period because I didn't have control anymore over Women in Horror Month. And again, if anyone's listening to this, I'm not talking specifically about anybody ill of anybody, just it wasn't a good fit. And obviously people are listening. I didn't mean if anybody.
No, don't. Oh, please. I mean, no, that's an open question whether or not anybody will be listening. Don't. No,
we don't actually post the actual podcast. We actually reenact the entire thing if you've listened to any of them.
Oh my God.
I'm really good at voices.
I bet you do a good hand in Neurotica. I do.
Just you wait.
You'll find out as soon as this episode comes out. You'll be like, did I actually say any of those things?
Fake news.
It sounds like me. It sounds a lot like me.
So just blame Sean. If anybody has issue with anything they think
Absolutely.
Hannah is saying, it's really Sean.
I even do Nicole's voice.
Yeah, you're really good at it.
I'm super good at it.
All the times when I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, that's Sean.
See what I just did? I sounded just like Nicole just there.
Amazing.
Whoa, mind is blowing up.
So, yeah, not trying to, just take it in, take a minute and breathe. We know it's a lot. But I can understand how being taken under the umbrella of an existing not-for-profit organization for something as kind of scrappy and flexible, maybe, as Women in Horror Month, I mean, and having worked in the nonprofit sphere a lot and like dealt with these, it's not about anybody doing anything wrong or bad or anything. Sometimes it just seems like, oh, maybe we're ready for this and this is going to be a good fit. And it just isn't, that's not where you need to be. That's not testing anybody.
And so, sorry, go ahead.
No, continue.
We didn't
that's
say
all.
anything.
And so 2 things with that, if I can remember them, is, when you were saying, Nicole, about how you felt welcomed, that is like, you have no idea how happy that makes me, because that's always been really important. And one of the things that happened during those years is you would have had the complete opposite experience. In fact, you probably would never have come back. It was not welcoming. It was the opposite. And I didn't have the control that I needed for it to be that way. So, long story short, Viscera ended up shutting down. I took Women in Horror Month back, which would have happened regardless. But I will say two things again. Once I took it back, that's when it started being something I understood, because up until then, it's like I didn't write that thinking it was going to be this virally kind of thing and is going to start a movement. I wasn't like prepared with a mission statement and shit. So it's like when that happened, I didn't really know what Women in Horror Month was and what I was supposed to do and not do. And so I think once we left Viscera, Mickey Hickle came on, was always there, but she really stepped up and created this, what our website is now, which is like an ongoing database. And that was just felt right. It's like, okay, you tell us what you're doing. If it fits in the mission, we're going to add it here and we're going to share it. And we're going to create this ongoing database of all these amazing things that are happening. And that feels right to me, because it's not about me. It's not about an organization. Because it's like you don't celebrate National Ice Cream Day because of to be nice to ice cream, you just want to eat ice cream, like you want to like be like, oh, I need to go talk to the founder of ice cream. So I wanted it to be something separate from me. And now that I know how to do that, I feel in control about it in a way. So I'm really glad that you found us when you found us, or at least I hope if it was during that period, I'm glad that I was the person that you got in touch with.
I feel like it was at the end of the period you were with Viscera, because when I first became aware of Women in Horror Month, there was that affiliation. But that was when I wasn't really doing anything. I was just starting to I Facebooked you. I think I Facebooked you through the Women in Horror Month Facebook page, I think.
Okay, maybe.
I could be misremembering.
In love with you as soon as I found out you were writing a film that had to do with something I was writing a film about, and you were actually making it. So I was like, oh, awesome, because I'm not making mine. And this is, not that mine is similar to yours, just a topic.
But that's huge, because that was part of what was such a big deal to me. Sorry, I just totally cut you off.
No, go. I don't have anything else to say.
I was, because for listeners at home, as I recall, and if I'm wrong, somebody who would know, nobody's going to know except me or Hannah, correct me, but I think I Facebooked Women in Horror Month because I was working on Small Talk and I was going to be crowdfunding for it. And so I was trying to reach out to people who I thought might be interested in a film like Small Talk, which is a feminist horror film about the phone sex industry, or somebody who works in the phone sex industry, based on like my own personal experiences doing that. And so it was a very weird personal thing to be reaching out to people about. And I like Facebooked Women in Horror Month being like, hey, would like my crowdfunding campaign be something that people who follow your page might be interested in, whatever. I don't want to be spammy, but it seems like, maybe there's a connection here. And Hannah messaged me back and was like, oh my God, I'm working on a short horror movie about phone sex right now too. And it was, for me, it was this moment of like, it was a really, I feel cheesy saying it, but it was a really powerful moment for me personally, in part because I was like, Hannah and I could be competitive right now. We could have been like, wait, no, I'm doing the feminist phone sex horror movie. No, I'm doing but instead your response wasn't, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing. Like, bitch, get off my Facebook page. You were like, we have to like figure out how we can support each other, and like how our movies, maybe there's some way we could something to like, work together. And I was like, oh my God, this is all I've ever wanted, is that to be the response? And I'm like, yes, that's what I want. I want there to be more feminist phone sex horror movies, and I want the people making them to be working together, not like competing for like who's going to get it out first and who's is going to like get into whatever festival like bullshit. That Hannah, the fact that you like met my reaching out to you in such a like kind, welcoming way, and in the spirit of cooperation rather than a kind of negative competition. Not that competition is always bad. I think like, there can be healthy competition where people where women especially can work to better, each do like the strongest work they can do if it's like a healthy, good spirited, competition that isn't about cutting each other down. But that you were just like, this is awesome. And I was like, this is awesome. And I was so heartwarmed. And it was one of those like little moments where you get a glimpse of how the world could be, but so rarely is, you know?
You're making me all like teary over here.
Oh,
That's so awesome that you say that, because I just, it's funny. I so remember that interaction. Uh, because I think I might have had, and now that I think about it, I think my thought process might have been like, oh my God, someone else is making this movie. And then it was like, oh, that's a good thing. That's awesome. And then I was like, I think I gave like $5 because I didn't have much to your campaign. And I was like, you know, one of the things that's so important that you bring up is, it's no secret that women compete with each other in like this horrendous way, and a lot of that is, you know, constructed the way we're brought up. Um, but and this also goes back to something else you said earlier about the community and the acceptance. I find that a lot of the time it's great, but I find that you still run into that, and it's hard sometimes as a woman, I think, to take pleasure in another woman's success. And I think that that's one of our biggest problems, because once we can hire each other and work together, we're creating jobs for each other. But the more we are like, well, fuck her, she's making a movie, I want to make her. Fuck that, she got into that festival and I didn't. I mean, how are we going to get any advancement if we're not on the same team with each other?
Yeah.
And it's, yeah. So I try really hard to always be, even if, and I didn't feel that way towards you actually at all, but had I felt that way, I wouldn't ever have let myself stop me from supporting someone because of it. Um, Not that I did have that with you, but just had that happened. So it's interesting. I think that it's, I don't know if men do experience it, I'm sure, but I think for women, we're just so trained to just, there's only one space for us.
Exactly.
Who's gonna get that space, Like, what the fuck? You look at how many fucking slasher films there are. You can't have two phone sex movies. Like, I mean, I think women just forget that, there's more room if we create it for each other instead of, hating on each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's about making that space and carving it out. And it's hard because if you don't carve out that space, the space you're going to be given is, there's going to be one slot. One woman gets to like make a horror movie once every 10 years or whatever.
Yeah. And God forbid she doesn't do a great job. Well, that just means all women can't make films.
Exactly.
I mean, okay, but as a guy, I just want to point out that if you all get to make your films and share space, that's only going to highlight how bad I am at everything, because you're actually competent. I am a white man, and I deserve to have my incompetence somehow interpreted as being competence.
That's why we're business partners.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Sean, you just reminded me of an interaction I had 2 days ago with a white male in regards to the Axman Film Festival that I totally forgot about.
Was he like upset that you don't take films from guys? Is that what?
Oh no, it's better than that.
Oh my God!
Oh, great. It's because it's the core of the entitlement. So I get an email from a guy, and he's telling me about how great his movie is, and Fangoria loves it, and he's like, I really would love a waiver to your festival because, we just spent all this money on the production and blah, blah, blah. And I wrote back. I know. I wrote back and I was like, okay, do I want to be an asshole? Or do I want... So I wrote back and I said, sure, I'd be happy to give you a waiver. Just send me the name of the woman that wrote and directed your film. And he wrote back and was like, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, the point is, first off, men that I get submissions from men every year because they are entitled. They don't, not all men. I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't mean that.
But no, all of us.
These men are like, oh, it's a film festival. Of course I'm welcome to submit a film. It's like, I don't need to it's for women. It's like no concept that they might not be the target here, the person that we want. And so anyway, so I responded. He writes back, and his response was pretty epic, actually. it was well, the first thing he said was, "Oh, yeah, it's not by women. I'm sorry, but when we make a film in 2 years, we hope to have another anthology and maybe have one or two women in it."
Oh my fucking God.
So
Maybe.
I
We
took a deep
hope.
breath.
We hope. We're crossing our fingers and praying every night. We can't, do anything to make this happen ourselves. We have to
And
just
just
hope.
one or two. Just one or
Just one or two. Well, let's not get crazy here. I mean,
yeah.
One or two out of like 20.
Yeah.
Let's
So I
be
wrote
honest.
back and I was like, what did I write? I wrote, well, maybe you'll consider more than that. And that's all I wrote. And then he's like, well, it depends on, fun. I mean, it was just a bull. I stopped the conversation. So I was like, I'm not interacting with you anymore. But it's just this like, entitlement of festival submissions. And you're spending money on those submissions. So when a guy submits and pays to, I mean, really, you must have money lying around if you didn't even bother to read that this is not your space. And second, I just couldn't believe that. He said, yeah, well, we'll try to get one or two. Oh, I mean, talk about tokenizing something. I mean, it just blew my fucking brain.
like, he doesn't even realize that him saying that makes him look worse. He thinks he's being the hero. It's awesome.
Yeah, like, oh, I'll pat you on the head. Well, maybe we'll do one or two. I'm like, well, thanks, buddy. Like, oh, you're so generous.
I'm totally a feminist. I met a woman once.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That's
a thing
the whole
that happened.
story.
It's amazing.
It was a thing. Yeah.
That's a great segue though, because the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the Axe Wound Film Festival anyway. And because I'm curious about like both how, well, tell us and tell our listeners when and how exactly you decided to launch that. It's that you've done the Axe Wound zine, and Women in Horror Month has been going on for some years at this point, and you decide because you're not doing enough to like create a nurturing space for other women in horror that you want to launch a film festival that exclusively screens films written and directed by women, which is fucking awesome. And so tell us about that.
Well, so it's really funny. If you go back, I don't know if anyone who's listening has this book in their house, but Ivanka Vukovic's Horror Miscellany. And that came out many years ago, and it mentions Axe Wound Zine, and it also mentions the Axe Wound Film Festival, which, by the way, did not exist yet. But I wanted it to. And so at the time, I was like, years ago, I'm going to start this, and then I never was able to. So it's funny that, like, if you're looking at that book, people would be really confused because it's like, wait, didn't that start like 8 years later? But anyway, so a couple reasons. So I started it because I'd always wanted to. It was my dream is always to have like a conference, like a full like women in horror convention conference con kind of thing. But I knew that was too big, so I was like, I'm going to start small. I never would have actually been able to do it if not for I was in Brattleboro. I was reading a local newspaper, and there was an article with this guy that ran the Hooker Dunham Theater, which I hadn't heard of, and he was talking about what it looked like, and the description of it sounded kind of creepy, and I was like, oh, that sounds like interesting space. And then talking about how they were open to events, and so I was like, there's something feels right about this. So I looked them up, and I saw that it was very affordable to rent space. And yet at the time I didn't have that money, but my mom's boyfriend was amazing and was like, here, I'm going to do this for you. So I had the space and I had no other funds. And I just said, well, in the spirit of zining and DIY, it's like, I don't need anything. I mean, I don't care about anything other than showing films and having people that can share their work. So having the space, and then I started kind of building from there, and it was very kind of, I learned a lot the hard way, but it was just like, okay, now I can do this. And that's something that I can do that's not in February. And it's another way that I can help get women's work shown and help this community in person form. And it was just as kind of a on the fly learning as I go thing every year. As you know, when you've been there, I mean, I had to learn the hard way that I didn't get to set up last year, this past time, the night before. So it was a little chaotic in the morning. And so, things I've had to learn. But yeah, it was kind of, this is the right time for this and something I've always wanted. And Axe Wound was the perfect name to tie it all together. And yeah, I can't believe it's actually going to be, now that it's going to be its third year. That's kind of crazy.
What do you have? Do you have any exciting plans you can share with our listeners about what to expect year 3 if they want to come to Brattleboro in November for the Axe Wound Film Festival and meet everybody participating in this conversation right now? We'll all be there.
I don't want to meet people.
Well, Sean, you can throw things at Sean, spitballs.
You can throw things at me.
They get caught in his beard. It's a fun game.
We'll have a Sean hunt.
Sean will have a table set up where you can go and pay him and he'll talk in your voice.
Exactly. Yes. So that's coming. But what else is going to be at the Axe Wound Film Festival?
Yeah. So other than that, this is the first year that we're going to be longer. It's going to be 1.5 days. So it's going to be Friday night and all day Saturday, which is awesome. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more on my end, but that's okay because I think it might be actually in a way less stress because I don't have to cram everything into this one day. Which I tend to do because I want to show so much work, and instead I make everyone sit on their ass for like 8 million hours. But so this year it's going to be Friday night and Saturday. We have some people coming back, like hopefully you guys, to do. I won't say much because I, don't know if you want me to.
There'll be a thing.
But you guys will be there for a thing. And Heidi Moore is returning. She's flying out to run a workshop that we're going to publicly talk about what that's about a little later. But it should be good. And it's related to kind of being on set and empowerment and that kind of a thing. We might have a certain person coming to do a technical type of skill workshop that I can't give away yet, but if it happens, once I know, I will. So there's a lot of stuff. Oh, and maybe someone else who I can't say their name might be coming down to do a presentation from Canada who has a book coming out soon with Rue Morgue. So maybe I did give it away. That's okay.
A little teaser. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So many exciting things.
So lots of exciting things, and I want to make sure there's time to show films too. So, but there will be, and there's going to be a Q&A again because one of the things I want to say about the Axe Wound Film Festival that blows my mind is we have no money. Like all our sponsors usually, they might give us a little, but it's usually like gifts and stuff to donate and that kind of thing. And I just feel really proud that I'm able to pull something together that's useful for other people without having all this money, because it's just like because if you find the right place in your community, it's like you can make things happen with little money. And that makes me happy because to know the positive impact it's having with like this DIY kind of thing it's just cool, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's awesome. And I think it's really inspiring how much you've done and how competently, because let me tell you, I have been to film festivals where there was a lot more money involved and they ran a lot less smoothly than Axe Wound. There were a lot more technical problems. Oh yeah. There were a lot more scheduling fuck ups. There all sorts of just everything you don't want happening at a film festival. And you guys are always so I know you're saying we were scrambling at the last minute, whatever, but from a filmmaker's perspective, Axe Wound is so much just smoother and it's a good time and you don't let us see you sweat so much. So it's not impacting any of us in a negative way. It's probably stressing you out to be doing things on a shoestring and all, but you do a great job of hiding that stress. And I want to talk to you about how you promote all your awesome projects through social media in a minute. But first, I want to ask you one more question about Axe Wound, and then I think we're going to play a game.
Yeah, I want to play a game.
Yeah, Sean wants to play a game. He's getting antsy. But I want to ask you about the Axe Wound mixtape that's a thing. Can you tell us about that? I'm very excited about this thing.
So I had not gone into that thinking I want to do a VHS mixtape because that never even was like a possibility in my brain. I didn't know that was possible. And I posted something about how I was going to do this quote mixtape, but it was not an actual mixtape. It was like I'm going to do a show, like a screening. And Heidi Moore wrote, "Oh my God, is it going to be on VHS?" And I was like, "I wish." And then she put me in touch with Magnetic Magic, and it was like, "Oh my God, we can actually do this." And again, it's not money so much out of my pocket as rather like a collaboration together that benefits, two businesses. And it's through those kind of experiences that, these things are able to happen. But so I decided to just make it as a way to raise some money, a small amount of money for the film festival. And it's going to feature films from the first and second year with a little bit of, stuff mixed in. The selection was based off of, I obviously didn't like go and say, oh, these are the films, I want these films and nothing else. It was really, who's got distribution, who can do it, who wants to do it. So it kind of came down to, that was a hard thing, was figuring out who was allowed to have their films on it, the timing, because with VHS, you're very limited, on your amount of time. And so there's a little stress there of, oh, I hope people don't feel left out and blah, blah, blah. But it's volume 1, so my hope is that all of the films eventually, if able, will make it onto one of these VHS tapes. And that comes out in May, end of May, early June, and we have an original content from Casey Hansen, the homicidal homemaker, who, fun fact, created that show because of Women in Horror Month and has continued to do it. So I thought it would be awesome to bring her in.
That is fantastic. I'm so amped for this mixtape. I've been tweeting about it and stuff a lot. I need to get one of the limited edition copies. And so listeners, if, you're hearing this, you should try to grab one of those from Magnetic Magic. We'll have them where you can also get the 4 Mile Circus Grindhouse double feature featuring Small Talk, aka 1900 Kill You, and Beneath the Black Moon.
Elijah's great to work with too. The guy at Magnetic Magic. He's super fun.
He was mean to me on Twitter. I was like, oh my God, I need one of these. And he was like, no, none for you. You don't get one.
Okay, in fairness, that's because I told him you're a jerk.
I just wanted to say also, I didn't tell people yet, so it is here for the first time. We are going to be selling, for people that buy those rare copies, it's going to come with some goodies. It's going to come with a miniature new Axe Wound zine. And some rare temporary tattoos and some stickers and things from filmmakers. So it's kind of got some swaggy stuff in there as well.
Just to sweeten the pot.
Goodbye.
That is fantastic. Well, Hannah, we've been taking up a lot of your time. If you have a little more time, we're going to ask you a few more questions. But first, let's have a game break.
Let's play a game.
Okay.
Are you guys ready for the game?
What's the game?
Well, this game, I have high expectations for success with this game because this is the Women in Horror trivia game.
Oh man, you're gonna just give me a panic attack right now, aren't you?
I'm playing too. You're not in alone.
It's both of you together.
And the stakes couldn't be higher.
Couldn't be higher. For every question you get right, we'll send you.
What's the prize?
We'll send you the Chris Cafaro postcards. I'll send you.
Send you some postcards.
You don't have to send me anything. I just don't want to sound stupid.
Trust me, you won't.
You're not going to sound stupid. Have you heard who you're talking to? And also,
my questions aren't fair in the first place. So
sweet, that's what I want to
hear. You won't sound dumb. I'm just going to sound like weirdly specific and like a jerk.
Okay.
So So let's jump into it. First question: what was director of American Psycho, Mary Harron's career prior to becoming a filmmaker? A music journalist. B, a Marine. C, a hairdresser. D, all of the above. So
Do we have a buzzer here, or are we just
no,
kind of?
you just both take a turn and
It's just
guess.
completely like there aren't clear rules, and it's
Oh
chaos.
God.
I mean, I'm pretty damn sure she was a music journalist.
That's what I would say because it seems like the most. It's either that or it's all of them.
I'm mad because I knew this at one point because around the time that film came out, I was reading a lot about her, but I'm pretty damn sure she was a music journalist.
And the answer
I'm
is
gonna go with that.
Is you going to go with that too?
Yeah, yeah.
And that is correct.
Yay!
She was a music journalist.
We won.
So
Congratulations.
question number 2. What project from the directors of American Mary and also what are the sponsors of the Axewound Film Festival, the Soska sisters, has Sean, that's me, previously listed as one of his favorite things on this show? Was it A, ABCs of Death 2, B, Hellevator, C, Crying Alone in the Dark, or D, Master Chef Junior?
Well, considering your question had the word show in it, I'm going to have to go with Hellevator because that was the only one that was a show.
Yeah, what the fuck, Sean?
Did I say show? I meant project.
Yeah, well...
Fail!
Considering I was sitting right here when you did it, I'm also...
Is that what I said, show?
Yes, and also, but when you shared this favorite thing, I was right here.
Yeah, you just have to remember.
Yes, I'm gonna go with Hellevator as well.
Hellevator is correct.
Oh, yay, we won again.
Awesome.
See, it's not so hard, except for maybe this one. So, final question in our Women in Horror trivia. Through her marriage to Christopher Guest, what title does Halloween actress Jamie Lee Curtis hold in the British ranks, or I believe it's called British peerage? Is it A, Countess, B, Princess, C, Baroness, or D, Murderess?
Oh. And this is according to who?
This is in the British ranks. Christopher Guest, also from
Waiting for Guffman.
Waiting for Guffman and things like that, holds a rank in the House of Lords.
And so, let's see.
What were A and C again?
A is Countess, B is Princess, and C is Baroness, and D is Murderess.
I'm going to go with Baroness.
You're going to go with Baroness?
I want to say Countess.
You want to say Countess?
That was my B pick, so let's...
And the correct answer is Baroness.
Oh, shit.
Nice
As Christopher
one,
Guest
Nicole.
is known officially as the Baron Hayden Guest. And used to actually have a seat on the House of Lords until they changed rules.
I don't even really understand what the House of Lords is.
So you know how we have the Senate and the House of Representatives?
Yes.
So they have the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And
But
the House of Lords is basically like wealthy landowners.
It's not a decision-making body, though, right?
The House of Commons has more power, and the House of Lords over the last few centuries has lost more power and is more sort of what do you call it, ceremonial almost. But the House of Commons are all elected, and usually the ones you hear them talk about.
Okay.
So, but the House of Lords still
I think that's an interesting question because I would have never known that.
I mostly know it from having looked up stuff for this question.
To research the question. Okay. And on that note, Hannah, do you have a little bit more time so we can ask you about a little bit more stuff?
Sure, yeah. Go for it.
Sweet. Okay, but first, because then we're going to break this up into 2 episodes, can you tell our listeners at home where they can find you online?
Yeah, oddly enough, I don't have a website right now, which is annoying because I should, but I'm working on it. So HannahIsNeurotica.com will eventually exist. Right now it says coming soon. So in the meantime, I guess social media is the best place, just to find me, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Facebook, I have issues with Facebook these days. I tend to post more on Instagram. I think Instagram is probably where I am the most, but if you send me a message on Facebook, I'd get it. but I will have a website soon. But mostly womeninhorrormonth.com and all that is really where a lot of the stuff is right now with, the festival and the mixtape and all that information that people might want.
And that's what's the handle for that on the Twitters and the Instagrams? It's WIHM, I think.
So Twitter, I believe, is That's the only one that's a little different.
Okay.
I know Instagram is just Women in Horror Month. Facebook is Women in Horror Month, and Twitter, I believe, is WIH Month.
Gotcha. Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
I think that's right. We'll check it. We'll correct it in the show notes if it's not right.
Do a fact check me.
And we're 4 Mile Circus. That's 4milecircus.com. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, 4 Mile Circuits. That's the number of circuits now. I can never say our name right. No.
4 Mile Circuits. It can be another
4 Mile
offshoot
Circuits
podcast.
We're gonna have so many
robots.
offshoot podcasts from me fucking up our name. That's the number 4 followed by the word mile and the word circus, all crammed into a single word, and it's wonderful. And we will be talking more with Hannah next time, so join us then.
Yes. Bye.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or your platform of choice. Please visit us at 4milecircus.com to learn about our other projects and services, and be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 4 Mile Circus.